mayor's latest and final budget, he
Yeah.
talked about boosting up that rainy day fund and putting aside enough money that we'd be able to meet the pension obligation when it
Yeah.
comes. But I've, like you said, I've heard a lot of concern from folks about how that's going to affect our budgets moving forward.
Right.
How much do you worry about that? What do you think the impact will
Well,
be?
the way that the budget is structured, you probably have a 3-year cushion before you really start to see major impacts fiscally on what's going to happen. I mean, for example, they were pretty conservative in estimating revenues over the last 4 or 5 years, which meant they always ended up with a surplus, which allowed them to then salt money away.
Hmm.
How is that going to change now that you have a new contract in place with the police department? You have demands on the community in terms of what transportation needs to look like. You got the possibility now of major cuts in federal funding. How is that going to impact the city's ongoing budget? These are things that any incoming mayor needs to have an understanding of, and then have the right people around him to assist in advising him. The one issue I probably had with the last budget is I thought they should have probably parked away a little more money in the rainy day fund and the protection fund, because the more money you put in those funds, less money you have to spend on an ongoing basis from your limited revenue stream that you're going to have. I think they could have did a little better job of that, and I saw absolutely no reason why the council themselves should have been increased their own personal budgets by $1 million. You're talking about $9 million when money could have gone to other things that have impacted the community. And when you talk about the changes that they made, well, in a $3 billion budget, making $28 million worth of changes is a drop in the
I think it was
bucket.
like 2% of the overall
Exactly.
budget.
So, I mean, we're talking about how you save for tomorrow, because tomorrow will be coming and the resource allocations will be different.
I want to talk more about the city council boosting their own staff salaries, but
Uh-uh.
that's
Yeah,
probably that's more. I'll be
right.
reporting more on that.
Exactly.
Um, I we talked a little bit about some of the problems that the next mayor will inherit, but
Yeah.
let's dive into that a little bit deeper. I mean, what is like the kind of approximate threats that they're going to have to take on?
Well, clearly the issue of public safety always is paramount in the minds of most people who live in the city of Detroit. What is that going to look like? I mean, obviously, you got some legislation in Lansing that allows you and provides you with some additional money to support some of the community initiatives. But how do you still really tackle the issue of crime and poverty in the city of Detroit? Because the two go hand in hand.
Mhm.
And so when you talk about public safety, you also have to talk about poverty and how you impact that. And how do you begin to allocate resources to programs that will boost income, that will boost the training, that will provide levels of support for the people who live here, so that you aren't dealing with it on the back end, you're dealing with it on the front end. Again, another resource allocation issue. How do we address the issue of big development projects in the city of Detroit? A lot of tension in that area involving the use of tax abatements and tax captures. Does the community really understand what they mean, how they operate? I think there's been sort of a lack of education and informing people on how these process move forward, what the realities of developing in the city of Detroit are, especially given the high tax rate structure that we have in our community. It's still the highest millage rate of any community in the state of Michigan, and probably almost
Mhm.
in the nation.
Mhm.
How can you fundamentally address that issue when most of the taxes that are being assessed on residents don't really deal with the city of Detroit? They deal with the Wayne County RESA, they deal with Wayne County Metro Park, Huron Parks. They deal with issues that really don't have an impact, major impact in the city of Detroit. So then the question becomes, how do you better allocate resources that we're being taxed for to provide relief for the people who live in the city of Detroit? How do you really transform and create much more affordable housing that we need? There's been a lot of talk about numbers that have been thrown out there, but the reality is that if you look at reports that were done by the Detroit Housing Commission, they say that we need at least 100,000 units of affordable housing. How do we get there? What does that number look like, especially in light of cuts that are going to occur in the federal government? How do you begin to create the types of partnerships that you need in order to do that? How do you begin to continue to streamline the processes that the city uses to engage both business on the front end and internal business? All these things, and there are probably 10 other things that we
Yeah.
could go through. I'm just kind of giving you a sample of when they talk about understanding how it operates. You have to understand at both a micro level as well as a macro level. And then you've got to have the leadership skills necessary to bring the right people to the table to do the job and set the vision. And then you got to go out there and court the business community, court the neighborhood people, so that they understand that we're all in this together. We got to have a unifying message on how we bring ourselves together. We have to be unified. We have to be consistent. I'm not going to get everything that I need. You're not going to get everything you need. But if we both get enough of what we need, it makes it a little better for us. And then we can continue to work together because trust is the number one commodity I think that people need to have. Do I really trust you to do what you're supposed to do? In light of the history that people have seen on African American leadership in our community.